London, May 1940. The city stood at a crossroads, its ancient streets echoing with uncertainty and dread. The city was gripped by fear, not just from the ever-present coal smoke, but from the looming shadow of Nazi conquest. Every siren, every distant rumble, sent shivers through the population. Londoners moved through their days with a sense of foreboding, their faces tense, their eyes searching the skies. Across the Channel, Hitler's armies had swept through Europe with terrifying speed. France, once thought impregnable, was collapsing under the relentless assault. The world watched in disbelief as city after city fell. The British Expeditionary Force, Britain's best hope, was stranded at Dunkirk. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers trapped on the beaches, praying for rescue as enemy forces closed in. Headlines screamed disaster, and families waited anxiously for news of their loved ones. Radio broadcasts brought only grim news. Each bulletin seemed darker than the last, as the nation braced itself for what might come next. In Whitehall, the new Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, faced a nation on the brink of catastrophe. He had been in office for only days, yet the weight of the world already rested on his shoulders. Britain now stood alone, facing Hitler's seemingly unstoppable war machine. The threat of invasion was real, and the sound of air raid sirens became a chilling part of daily life. The war cabinet faced a stark and agonizing choice: fight on against impossible odds, risking everything, or seek terms with the enemy and hope to save what remained. To fight meant risking annihilation, bombed cities, the specter of invasion, and the possible loss of the empire itself. The cost would be unimaginable, both in lives and in the future of the nation. Peace could save lives and preserve the empire, but at what cost? Would it mean surrendering freedom and accepting a world ruled by tyranny? The cabinet was deeply divided, each man wrestling with his conscience. The fate of Britain and the world hung in the balance. Every decision, every word spoken in those rooms carried the weight of history. The decision made in those tense days would not only determine the future of the nation, but would shape the course of the 20th century itself. Would Britain stand as a beacon of defiance, inspiring hope across the world, or bow to tyranny for the sake of survival? The eyes of the world were watching. The weight of history pressed down on every man in that room as they faced a decision that would echo for generations to come. To truly understand the push for peace, we must first grasp the depth of Britain's desperation in May 1940. The mood across the nation was one of fear and uncertainty, as families huddled in bomb shelters and scanned the headlines for any sign of hope. The German blitzkrieg had shattered Allied defenses with terrifying speed and efficiency, leaving chaos and destruction in its wake. France, once thought invincible and a cornerstone of European security, had fallen in a matter of weeks. The world watched in disbelief as Paris was occupied and the French army surrendered. The British army barely escaped from Dunkirk, safe, but forced to leave behind nearly all their weapons, vehicles, and supplies. Britain was now nearly defenseless, its military strength severely diminished. The Royal Navy remained a formidable force, patrolling the Channel and guarding the coast. But there were grave doubts. Could the Navy alone stop a German invasion if the Luftwaffe controlled the skies above? The RAF, though brave and determined, was outnumbered and facing the battle-hardened Luftwaffe. Every pilot and plane counted, and the outcome of the coming air battles was far from certain. The odds were dire. The government was gripped by anxiety, and this harsh reality fueled urgent calls for negotiation and peace. Lord Halifax, the Foreign Secretary, led the argument for peace, not out of cowardice, but out of a hard-nosed pragmatism. He believed that survival might depend on compromise. Halifax saw a continent dominated by the swastika, with Britain standing alone and isolated. He feared that without a deal, Britain could be destroyed or forced to surrender on even worse terms. Halifax reasoned that Hitler might accept a deal. Germany would rule Europe, but Britain could keep its empire and avoid total defeat. It was a gamble, but perhaps the only way to save the nation. This was a cold, calculated approach, but one that resonated with many ordinary people and politicians alike. The fear of invasion and occupation was real and deeply felt. Why risk everything for what seemed like a lost cause? This was the agonizing question haunting Britain's leaders, dividing the cabinet and the country. The nation's future teetered on a knife's edge, with every decision carrying the weight of history. The world held its breath as Britain faced its darkest hour. The War Cabinet's debate in late May 1940 was fierce. Churchill, defiant, refused to consider surrender. Halifax, representing the establishment, urged negotiation. Halifax argued Britain's resources were exhausted. The US might not help. If Britain lost, the terms would be far worse. He wasn't calling for surrender but for exploring peace through Mussolini's Italy. Many in government quietly agreed. Churchill's passion seemed reckless. Peace, even humiliating, might save the nation from destruction, but Churchill warned, negotiating from weakness would destroy morale and make Britain a vassal to Hitler. In this alternate history, Halifax prevails. The cabinet, swayed by fear and logic, chooses negotiation. Churchill, defeated, resigns. Halifax becomes prime minister, ready to seek terms. The course of history shifts in a smoke-filled room. Britain's fate is sealed, not by battle, but by decision. With Halifax as prime minister, Britain, battered and desperate, seeks peace through Mussolini's mediation. The hope is to salvage what remains of the nation's strength, to avoid the devastation of a full-scale invasion. In smoky rooms and behind closed doors, anxious British officials pin their last hopes on Italian diplomacy, clinging to the belief that compromise might spare their homeland from ruin. Hitler, eager to focus his armies eastward and secure his western flank, agrees to talks. He sees an opportunity to cement his dominance in Europe without further bloodshed on the Western Front. The British delegation arrives in Brussels, not as equals, but as supplicants. Their faces betray the weight of defeat, their posture one of resignation rather than resolve. The Treaty of Brussels is signed. Britain recognizes German conquests on the continent, returns former German colonies seized after the Great War, and accepts strict limits on its navy and air force. The ink dries on a document that will reshape the world. In return, Germany halts all military action against Britain and its empire. The guns fall silent, and the threat of invasion recedes, at least for now. The threat of invasion vanishes. Sons return home. Relief sweeps the nation, and for a brief moment there is celebration in the streets. Families are reunited, and the shadow of war lifts from British soil. But beneath the surface, shame and humiliation fester. The public senses the cost of this uneasy peace, and the pride of a once defiant nation is wounded. Britain, once a symbol of resistance and hope, has surrendered its soul for survival. The flag still flies, but it does so at half-mast, a silent testament to lost honor. The phrase "peace with honor" echoes hollowly across the airwaves. Many wonder if true honor can survive such a bargain, or if it has been traded away forever. The empire is preserved, its far-flung territories spared from immediate threat, but at the cost of dignity and independence. The world is stunned, watching as Britain's star dims on the global stage. Nazi Germany now stands unopposed in Europe, its banners flying over conquered capitals, its power unchecked. Britain's war is over, but its spirit is broken. The silence of peace is heavy, filled with regret and uncertainty about the future. The nation becomes a junior partner in Hitler's new order, its leaders forced to accept a diminished role in shaping the world. The consequences of this devil's bargain will echo for generations, shaping the destiny of Britain and the world in ways no one can yet foresee. The summer of 1940 is eerily quiet. There is no Battle of Britain, no Blitz, no finest hour. Fighter Command's heroes remain unknown, air raid sirens fall silent, evacuated children return home. Halifax's government preaches realism and rebuilding, but the spirit of defiance never materializes. National unity is replaced by quiet resentment and humiliation. The world is shocked. Britain, the historic bulwark against tyranny, has yielded. In America, isolationism triumphs. Lend-Lease never happens. Roosevelt's arguments for intervention collapse. Europe's resistance movements are crushed by despair. London is no longer a beacon of hope. Governments in exile find no refuge. The flame of freedom flickers out. Britain becomes just another nation under Hitler's shadow. The continent sinks deeper into darkness with no hope from across the Channel. The global balance of power shifts overnight. The consequences for freedom are catastrophic. The world watches helpless as Nazi Germany reigns supreme. With Britain out, Hitler dominates Western and Central Europe. No need to defend the Atlantic coast or fight over the Channel. Germany's full might turns east. France's resources fuel the Nazi war machine, unimpeded by Allied bombing. In the US, isolationism hardens. Pearl Harbor may still happen, but without Britain, America focuses on Japan. No D-Day, no Allied bombing, no Western Front. The Holocaust accelerates, unchecked by outside forces. Nazi genocide proceeds in secret, with no hope of liberation. The British Empire, tainted by compromise, loses moral authority and crumbles from within. Nationalist movements in India and Africa rise, pointing to Britain's hypocrisy. The empire collapses faster and more chaotically than in our timeline. In June 1941, Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa, a true one-front war. The Wehrmacht, unopposed in the West, unleashes its full power on the Soviet Union. Extra divisions, tanks, and aircraft drive deep into Russia. No North African campaign, no British bombing raids, no Lend-Lease aid for the Soviets. The German advance is faster, more devastating. Moscow falls before winter. The Soviet Union collapses. Hitler gains the oil of the Caucasus and the breadbasket of Ukraine. Nazi Germany becomes a Eurasian superpower, self-sufficient and brutal. The ideology of racial supremacy is entrenched, unchallenged. Europe is locked in a new dark age ruled by terror. Liberation is impossible. Hope is extinguished. Decades later, the world is darker still. The Cold War is not with the Soviets, but with a nuclear-armed Nazi Germany. Liberal democracy faces off against racial totalitarianism. Europe is a prison continent, opposition crushed, Nazi ideology triumphant. Britain lives in the shadow of its powerful neighbor, its independence a fragile illusion. The empire is gone. Britain is diminished, insular, and tainted by proximity to Nazi rule. Fascist movements worldwide are emboldened by Germany's victory. Human rights and democracy are seen as failed ideas. The post-war order never emerges. The world is more brutal, less free, and far more dangerous. The swastika's shadow stretches across the globe. This dark alternate history reveals the true weight of Britain's choice in 1940. By refusing peace, Britain denied Hitler the one-front war he needed to conquer the world. The Battle of Britain, the Blitz, and the War in the Atlantic drained Nazi resources and kept hope alive. Britain became the base for Allied liberation, the bridge to American support, and the heart of resistance. Without Britain, D-Day, the Western Front, and the Allied victory would have been impossible. The decision to fight preserved not just Britain's freedom, but the world's. It forged a more just, unified society and inspired the post-war order. History is shaped by choices. In 1940, Britain chose defiance over surrender. That choice saved the world from darkness. The stand taken in 1940 remains one of history's most heroic moments.